is alleviated. Unwind and heal another heartache. I fall behind for doing nothing at all. We're young, it's ready for the taking. You're gone, another chance I wasted. Everything's fine, I'm doing nothing at all. I feel 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 nothing at all.
Have to. If Dallas doesn't win the NFC East this year, something is majorly wrong.
Want to chime in? Join the live chat on either Facebook or Twitter at Cream City Central. Your comment could be featured on today's show. From the WWSP 90 FM studios in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, here's Alex Strouf.
Oh, yeah. Live on a Tuesday, this is the Alex Strouf Show presented by Cream City Central alongside producer Kyle. I'm Alex Strouf. Kyle, happy Tuesday. Hope you had a good weekend, my friend.
I had a great weekend, man. I had a great weekend.
Good to hear that, man. That's always good. We got to see each other, which was good. And yeah, obviously my audio is just decided.
You're having some audio issues today. It's your turn to have audio issues, not my turn. So
sudden, man. The intro didn't want to work, and here we are. You're texting me, dude, go, as things are happening. But here we are, all ironed out on a Tuesday. Good to be with you. Obviously, a lot of headlines in the world of sports, so we'll jump into all those. Over the course of the next 2 hours, Ryan White, who is the editor of VikingsWire.com, will join us here. Jack White, excuse me. Ryan White is a former Auburn football player, former Packer as well that I just did there. See, we're all over the place. Jack White is the editor of VikingsWire.com, and he will join us here later in the 3 o'clock hour. And in the 4 o'clock hour, we'll have Olivia Pelishek, who is a podcaster here for Cream City Central with Bernie's Bums. She'll drop by about 20 minutes after 4 o'clock to discuss what we assume will be the implementation of a 60-game season by Rob Manfred and company. We will have an official answer of that sometime while we're live, because we're expecting a response at the top of next hour. 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern is when players will respond. So we'll save all our baseball talk for after 4 o'clock. But lots of football stuff to get into, and we'll do that as well with Jack White here at about 3:30. But anyway, Kyle, lots going on, man. Lots going on. I mean, I'm just so sick of talking about baseball, but it almost seems like that's what we have to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest story really in sports right now is, I mean, whether you're a baseball fan or not, what's going on with baseball is just insane. And, I mean, the owners, what's going on with the owners and the players, what's going on with Rob Manfred as the commissioner as a whole, and just so much, as we say, so much incompetency is what's going on.
Yeah, that's been your word the last week or two.
Yep, that has, yeah.
And rightfully so, Kyle. Obviously, incompetency across the board. So we go to our Twitter question for today.
It's the Strouf Show Twitter question.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Chime in on today's topic at Cream City Central on Twitter.
So you can head on over to @Cream City Central on the cesspool that we know as Twitter. And today's question is the following. Who do you blame for the MLB's hesitation to start the 2020 season? Your options are the Players Association, Manfred and the owners as one option, and then both is your third option. We will dive into some results here later in the show, but that poll now available at Cream City Central on Twitter. Just over 50 votes in already, but like I said, we will wait to get to the results later here in the show. But that is your question today. Kyle, did you vote? And if you did, which direction did you go?
I did vote, and I'm actually surprised by what the results are looking like so far. We won't get to them specifically. You'll have to go to Cream City Central's Twitter to find out the results so far. But I was back and forth between the owners and both because or Manfred/owners and both.
Yeah.
Because I do think that we put so much fault on the owners and Manfred that, I mean, what the Players Association has done, I mean, they're not immune either. They're not perfect. So I think that there has been some incompetency on both ends. So I did vote both. Okay. And surprisingly, a good majority amount of people agree with me. So
yeah, that's also the direction I went, right? So initially, early last week when we were talking about this, and I don't want to get too into baseball, but when and where was the big phrase that the players kept throwing out there, and now it's just not looking like that's quite the case. But once we have an official answer, we'll dive more into baseball later in the show. But that said, I want to talk football because I love talking football, so let's do that.
Is Pollard your best negotiator with Zeke? Who? Pollard.
Zeke who?
It's the Alex Strouf Show, presented by Cream City Central.
The Dallas Cowboys, once again in the headlines, man. And this time they finally have a positive, a thumbs up in regards to the drama that's been coming out of AT&T Stadium the last, weeks, months even. And this time again, it is surrounding quarterback Dak Prescott. But this time, like I said, it's a thumbs up rather than a thumbs down, as Dak Prescott has officially put pen to paper on a $31 million contract tender, which essentially makes him super filthy rich, even though he already was. But obviously one of the highest paid players now in the NFL for the 2020 season. And this allows the option for a long-term deal, but it needs to be done by July 15th. So this $31 million applies to the 2020 season, but when they look at a long-term deal, that needs to be in place by July 15th. Now, obviously, they're going to move. Dak especially is going to move as fast as he can to get that deal in place, because come July 15th, if a deal's not done, we know what's going to happen to the money in the NFL. We know what's going to happen to the cap space. We've talked a lot about it. That is going to go downhill, and the opportunity for a lot of dollar signs is going to decrease. So Dak now signs this tender and moves to the next step of signing a long-term multi-million-dollar contract, which we all expect to fall into place at some point. Now, I said, and you hear it in the intro each day, the Cowboys have to make the playoffs this year in 2020. The Cowboys have to make the playoffs. And this proves to me that they're all in on 2020. Dallas, Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones, they're all in on 2020. And they're proving it. They're not just sitting there and saying, like every team, all 32 teams in the National Football League typically say, oh, yeah, we're going to win the Super Bowl. We're all in 2020. Dallas is a little bit different of a case. Dallas is a little bit different than any other team that shows up to play and win 4 games. Dallas is making moves, and they have been for about a calendar year now, where you no longer have to scratch your head and say, yeah, Dallas is going 8-8. That's not realistic anymore, because even though Jerry Jones can sit there and say something like Zeke who.
Zeke who.
Zeke who.
Zeke who.
One of my favorite sound bites. He's never really that flustered by pressure. Jerry Jones isn't. He never has been. But deep down, don't you think the constant 8-8, America's team is 8-8 comments get under Jerry Jones' skin a little bit? I bet they do. Even though this guy is on a completely different planet in the terms of general managers and owners. I mean, this guy is tier A in the National Football League. But those things get under his skin a little bit. And he wants that to stop. Because Dallas has been in a position for the last, 4 or 5 years, especially since Ezekiel Elliott's been around, to be in the position to be the top dog in the NFC East. And that just really hasn't been the case outside of a year or two. We remember back in 2016 when they were, the number one seed out of the NFC East, one of the top seeds in the NFC. Green Bay goes in there and Aaron Rodgers' miraculous sideline throw to Jared Cook happens. But nonetheless, since then, they've been near the middle of the pack in the NFC East and haven't made the playoffs. So it's time for them to buckle down and make something happen. And Jerry Jones, despite his comments, right, he's going to go. He's going to go make something happen. So now we look at this Dak Prescott signing, and we pair it with the other moves that Jerry Jones has been making in the last calendar year. We look at La'el Collins, who was signed to a 5-year deal. We look at Amari Cooper, who was signed to a $100 million 5-year deal. We look at Ezekiel Elliott, who back in September signed a 5-year deal. And now Dak Prescott is working toward a 5-year deal. So for Dallas, they're starting to put the right pieces into play to go make a run and finally win that coveted NFC East title, which they haven't been able to do since 2016. And these 8-8 comments stem from Jason Garrett, right? Jason Garrett was the man who was constantly known as the guy who goes 8-8. But now he's gone. They didn't go with a former Cowboy. They didn't go with a former NFL player who's really going to fit and work with Jerry Jones well. They went and got a former Super Bowl champion. They went and got Mike McCarthy. So now you add all these pieces to this puzzle together, and it just proves to me that Dallas is all in on 2020, as they rightfully should be, because they have some of the biggest names at every position. You look at Dak Prescott, and you can give me all the crap in the world you want for saying that he's a top 5 quarterback for 2020, but that's realistically how I view it. He was second in passing yards last year. He was 4th in passing touchdowns. He still ran for over 300 yards and added 4 touchdowns rushing. And that is with Ezekiel Elliott and Amari Cooper on the team. And although the record didn't indicate that that team was a playoff team, because they weren't, they still have all the talent. They have one of the most talented rosters in the NFC, and you're silly if you think otherwise. That's absolutely the case. So looking at how Dallas moves forward into 2020, they've got the pieces. They've got the coach. They've got the smack talker and, a guy that talks the talk and walks the walk as their GM and owner and Jones. They just need to go out and win football games at this point. And with a first-year Mike McCarthy system being implemented into Dallas, as I say each day in our intro, this is the year they have to go make the playoffs. And I truthfully think it will be the year they win the NFC East. I don't view Philadelphia as the threat that everybody thinks they are. Although Carson Wentz, by all means, is a terrific quarterback, I don't think they win the NFC East this year. And you look at New York and Washington, I don't think either of those teams stand a damn chance. So looking strictly at Dallas, this team is in the best position to win the NFC East and make a playoff run. And by all means, Philadelphia could grab a 5, 6, or 7 seed, but I think Dallas wins the division. And they should for the next 5 years, because I mentioned all these pieces that are in play for the next several years. Ezekiel Elliott locked up on a 5-year deal last year. Amari Cooper, the same thing. La'el Collins, the same thing, a 5-year deal. And now Dak's looking to get, what I imagine will be a 4, 5, 6-year deal. So the timing of this, and I just kind of blew over it, so I want to dive into it a little deeper. The timing of this Dak signing is incredibly important. We get the tender now, so he's got big bucks, $31 million for the 2020 season. But looking ahead, I mentioned that July 15th date, and that is so important because we know with the way the economy is right now, with the odds of none or very little fans in the stands in the 2020 season, the salary cap's going to go straight to the floor. No hesitation. And that big contract that Dak has been trying to sign for the last, 10 months, that will go away come July 15th. So he needs to get a long-term deal in place by July 15th. And I imagine the deal is going to get done. I mean, everybody that has spoken about the situation, whether it be Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, or Dak Prescott, they want to get a deal in place, as they should. But again, looking at this Dallas offense, Dak Prescott now locked up for at least the year. He has to be at training camp. Ezekiel Elliott locked up for the next 4. Amari Cooper locked up for the next 4. You just drafted CeeDee Lamb, who was regarded as maybe the top wideout in that stacked 2020 draft class. Their offensive line is great. You look at La'el Collins, who I mentioned, locked up a 5-year deal. DeMarcus Lawrence locked up a 4-year deal last year as well. On the defensive side of the ball, you still have Leighton Vander Esch, who's one of the great young linebackers in football. Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe on that defensive line, and Xavier Woods and HaHa Clinton-Dix are their safeties. I mean, not too shabby of an all-around lineup for Dallas. Lots of talent throughout. And if they don't make the playoffs in 2020, I'll be absolutely blown away. Absolutely blown away. But the other reason the Cowboys are in the news this week is because of New York Jets safety Jamal Adams. And Jamal Adams has been on the record for a while at this point, saying he wants out of New York. And it really came to a head over the weekend as he listed the teams that he would like to go to. He just pretty much flat out listed them out. So the Baltimore Ravens, the Dallas Cowboys, the Kansas City Chiefs, the San Francisco 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks, the Houston Texans, and the Philadelphia Eagles and the Tampa Bay Bucks are on that list for Jamal Adams. Green Bay, not on that list. But I mentioned Dallas. And while I just mentioned their safeties there at the bottom, HaHa Clinton-Dix is there, as is Xavier Woods. So they don't really need Jamal Adams. Dallas doesn't. But Jamal wants out of New York, which is interesting. I mean, I get it. He is by far the number one star on that team. Let's go through it off the top of our heads. Who are the stars for New York? Jamal Adams is the first name that comes to mind. Le'Veon Bell? Sure, I'll give it to you. Solid back, been one of the best backs of the last decade. That's about it. I think Sam Darnold's going to be great, but I don't know if he's there yet. He's not star level yet. He hasn't really proven that he's, a top 15 quarterback yet. So the jury's still out on Darnold, but those are really your only two other names, Le'Veon Bell and Jamal Adams, when it comes to star power on the New York Jets. So his reasoning of wanting out is he wants to win, and eventually he's going to want a new contract. We look at those teams that he said he wants to be traded to. We'll run through those one more time. The Ravens, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Niners, so obviously both the Super Bowl attendees, the Seahawks, the Texans, the Eagles, and the Bucks. So all playoff teams from a year ago, besides Dallas and Tampa Bay, are teams on that list. And the non-playoff teams from a year ago on that list, Tampa Bay, of course, they acquired a guy by the name of Tom Brady on the offensive side of the ball. And Dallas, we just ran through what they've done in the last calendar year. Both of those teams are in great positions to go far. But Jamal Adams has an interesting tie with Dallas. He's from there. He grew up cheering for the Cowboys, Jamal Adams did. So that's really like his number one preference, is he wants to go home and play for the Cowboys. But again, we talk about all the money that Dallas has been throwing at their stars the last few years, and that's a problem Green Bay is going to have here after the 2020 season, where all of these big names are going to be free agents. Kenny Clark, David Bakhtiari, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, Kevin King, and the list goes on and on. Where Dallas has been signing those big names, Green Bay is not going to be able to. And adding Jamal Adams to the mix, yes, it would be great for 2020, because Jamal Adams is, if not the top safety in football, one of the top safeties in football. So wherever he goes, he'll plug in and play a big role, no matter who's already there, if it's Xavier Woods and Clinton Dix. So where will Jamal Adams line up? I imagine we don't see movement for quite some time. But of the teams he listed, all of them are intriguing fits. I look at Tampa Bay. He played with Todd Bowles, who was the Jets head coach when Jamal Adams was drafted. He's the defensive coordinator in Tampa Bay. So that could be an interesting fit. And obviously, Tampa Bay is a team I'm not completely sold on. And later in the show, we're going to do a segment about teams who I think are in make or break years, right? This is the year they have to go to the Super Bowl or the playoffs or what have you. Tampa Bay is not on that list for me because they have talent to outshine Brady's tenure, whether that be a year, 2, 3, 4, whatever, however long Tom Brady plays. Tampa Bay is in a good position for many years, as is Dallas. But I don't know if Jamal Adams ends up in Tampa Bay. Could a contender like Baltimore or Seattle or Kansas City add him? I think those are realistic possibilities. I think Kansas City's a really fun fit. But we'll see. We will see with Jamal Adams. That's the biggest question mark of these NFL headlines that came out over the weekend because you don't really know with Jamal Adams. You do not know. We will see. We will further the conversation about all things NFL here on the other side. Jack White, who is the editor of VikingsWire.com, joins me next. This is the Alex Strouf Show, presented by Cream City Central.
He is the top 5 right tackle in the league. There's no question. If you would have told me the Packers could have signed a top 5 right tackle in the league, I'm like, yes, please do it. But clearly Brian Gutekunst had other ideas, and we've seen guys leave the Packers and then kind of fade away. Maybe 1 or 2 years later. For example, Clay Matthews got released by the Rams. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Demarius Randall, Deshaun Kaiser. There's been a few guys who've kind of just faded away after they left the Packers, and that tells me that Brian Gutekunst does have a good gauge as to where his roster's at. Yeah. So the argument for leaving Bulaga alone, letting him go to the Chargers, is because, so let's say the Packers have $30 million to spend, and they did not spend it on Bulaga. They actually saved money sending Bulaga out to the Chargers, or not sending him, but letting him walk, and signing Christian Kirksey and Rick Wagner together. Those two players, their contracts equals $24 million. So they save roughly about $6 million. And you know what? They even add, let's just throw Mercedes Lewis contract in there. It's $2.25 million. So you're still looking at about 3.5. So it's interesting to see kind of the way these numbers work. And Bulaga's contract alone would have covered all 3 of those players. So I think that's where Brian Gutekunst does the math.
The Lambeau Lead, Cream City Central's official Packers podcast. Download wherever you get your podcasts.
We welcome you back into the Alex Strouf Show, now presented by Cream City Central, and we go to the phone lines where the editor and lead writer for VikingsWire.com, which is the part of the USA Today network, joins us. His name is Jack White. You can find him on Twitter at JackWhiteMN, Minnesota, of course. Jack, how are you, my friend? Thanks for taking the time.
Good, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
So, Jack, I guess let's start with the big thing that's been coming out of the neighboring state, and that's been the Dalvin Cook contract holdout, speculation, situation, whatever title you want to throw after the word contract. You've done a great job covering it for VikingsWire.com. It's been an interesting development these last few weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah. So just to give your Wisconsin listeners an idea of what's been going on, Cook will no longer participate in team-related activities until he receives what he determines to be a reasonable deal. That's according to Adam Schefter of ESPN. It later came out that ESPN's Courtney Cronin reported that Cook's ideal contract figure was north of what Christian McCaffrey was making per year, $16 million. Chad Graff of The Athletic then said that Cook is actually looking for more like $13 million. Then Cronin said that Cook would gladly take that number, being $13 million. So it seems like a magic number for Cook is $13 million right now. Looking at the Vikings cap space right now, they got $12.2 million, just over $12.2 million in cap space according to Over the Cap. Spot Rack has them at just over $11.7 million. So they might have to make a move to make that work for 2020. And I think there are some problems for this. So there's kind of been this debate right now between people who has more leverage, Cook or the Vikings. The Vikings are an offense that loves to run the ball, but I think the new CBA kind of makes things interesting for Dalvin Cook. Looking at it here, it states that a player shall not receive an accrued season for any league year in which the player is under contract to a club and in which he failed to report to the club's preseason training camp. So what does that mean for Cook? It means he could get fined $50,000 per day if he misses training camp, and he becomes a restricted free agent instead of an unrestricted free agent. So in short, it could cost him a lot of money. I think that leverage kind of affects things. I think if you're the Vikings, you still want to sign him just because he's such a good running back and such a big part of your offense that I think you might want to give him a deal. You just maybe don't want to pay him that much.
Jack White is my guest. Jack, this is almost reminiscent of kind of the Le'Veon Bell situation a few years ago with Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, I mean, Le'Veon Bell got the franchise tag, and there wasn't much precedent for people like holding out with the franchise tag, but he did it. And with Cook, it's kind of similar, but I'll say this. I think from what the Vikings have said publicly, they just really value Cook. And Gary Kubiak is in his first season as offensive coordinator. He was on the staff last year for the Vikings in his first season. And I just think from what they've said publicly, it just seems like if I had to guess, they would get a deal done. Kubiak was asked kind of about the growing trend of devaluing the running back position. And he basically said, you're probably talking to the wrong guy on that. He said Dalvin Cook could teach a class on their system. He was a bright, smart football player, and it's just part of the business. So I think, like, from what they've said publicly, it seems like they want to get a deal done with Cook. And from what they do schematically, it seems like they should want to get a deal done too, because ESPN's Mike Clay reported that the Vikings were the run-heaviest offense in the NFL in 2019.
Wow.
That's a game script adjusted stat. So this is a team that loves to run the ball. Obviously, Cook was their leading rusher. Alexander Madison had a good rookie year in 2019, but we just don't know what he will be like in a situation like Cook, where he has to take and run the ball like 250 times. We just don't. There are already so many unknowns on this Vikings offense that I think you're going to want to prioritize getting a deal done for Cook.
We'll get to those other question marks in the offense here in a second, Jack, but I want to use your expertise because clearly you're very well versed on the subject. If you had to take a guess, make a prediction, when do you think realistically the nearest time possible to get a deal done would be?
If I had to take a guess, I would say they'd probably try and get a deal done now, like this season, just because they value Cook. And like, I mean, sure, he could hold out and he could miss a few games, but the Vikings aren't a team that would be fine with him missing a few games. Like, I have this as like a 9-7, 8-8, maybe 10-6 Vikings team. That first game we play the Packers, like, I mean, I'm sure Packers fans would love if Dalvin Cook held out for that first game. Like, not having him is a big part of our offense, big part of their offense, and it just really affects things. So I think the Vikings would want to get a deal done sooner rather than later.
No, that's a great answer. Jack White is my guest, the editor over at VikingsWire.com. You mentioned some of the question marks around this offense, and wide receiver's been kind of a weird one, right? We saw the Stephon Diggs exit. Now Justin Jefferson brought in via the draft. I know you're a big fan of this pick. Bring me up to speed a beat on what you're feeling the last 2.5 months since the selection has been made.
Yeah, I really like Justin Jefferson. I like that they went out and got a guy who can go about replacing some of Stephon Diggs' production. I know some people have said recently that he might be better than Stephon Diggs. I have trouble believing that. Diggs is such a good route runner. He is such a big part of the Vikings offense. But Justin Jefferson's an interesting player. Kubiak said recently it's fair to say that he'll be playing inside quite a bit, being like in the slot.
Right.
He adds that dimension to the offense. I think, so if you're the Vikings, you shouldn't be like, who's the guy to replace Stephon Diggs? Because I don't think you can just plug in a guy unless you were really aggressive in a trade or something. I think you should say, what's the committee we could put together that may make up some of the production we lost with Diggs? And I think he could be a big part of that.
He's a week 1 starter, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's safe to say that he would, if I had to take a guess right now, I think he's the week 1 starter at that wide receiver 2 spot. Kind of beside Adam Thielen there.
Right.
I think wide receiver 3 is kind of an interesting battle with Tajay Sharp, Chad Beebe, and BZ Johnson there, and then Courtney Davis maybe even. So it's like you got some interesting options at the wide receiver 3 spot. And then maybe Irv Smith Jr., the tight end, has a bigger season than he once did, and that could help go about replacing Diggs.
I'm glad you threw the Courtney Davis mention in there. He was one of my favorite, lower prospects in the draft earlier this year. So, as much as I will admit, I'm not a huge Vikings fan. I'm a big Courtney Davis fan. So I'm glad you gave him some love. Jack White, managing editor of VikingsWire.com, joins me. Let's talk about Kirk Cousins. I mean, obviously, statistically, not too shabby of a year for him. It seems like he's fitting into Minnesota pretty well. Now a couple of years in, what's the ceiling for Kirk Cousins in this offense in 2020, Jack?
Josh, the ceiling. I think the ceiling is going to depend on Dalvin Cook. I think it's kind of unwise to look at his numbers and be like, how good can he be numbers wise? I think you should look at just how effective he is, how efficient he is, what his QBR could be, that kind of thing. Because we saw in 2018, his first season with the Vikings, John DeFilippo was offensive coordinator, and he was dropping back a ton, and the Vikings offense wasn't very successful. Then they switched to Kevin Stefanski, and they ended up emphasizing during that year, a system that was kind of more conducive to Cousins' success. He was dropping back still, but not nearly as much. They were running the football more. They were doing play action, and they were doing rollouts. I expect more of that. I expect kind of similar numbers to 2019. Hopefully the Vikings just kind of put him in a situation where he's not a guy like Mahomes, where he can win you a game, but he's a guy who can properly manage a game if a system is put around him. And if Dalvin Cook has a big year, I think so could Kirk.
Yeah, and I think as we mentioned, Kirk's wavered, right? He's been kind of one of the weirder quarterbacks in terms of consistency since his time with Washington. So overall, he's been solid, right? I mean, obviously, you've got to be pretty happy with the progress he's made in that offense the last 2 years.
Yeah, and you would think that most Vikings fans would think that, but a lot of people are kind of out on Kirk, and I kind of don't get it. It's like people forget about Christian Ponder, I guess. Like, I mean, like there were some dark times at the quarterback position. Yeah. It would have been great if Teddy worked out, but things happen, and right now Kirk's their guy, and I'm not too mad about it. Frankly, I think he's an above average quarterback. I think you can win a Super Bowl with an above average quarterback so long as you put the right pieces around him. And I think the Vikings are in a position where maybe they could do that.
And you bring up Teddy Bridgewater, which makes me want to pose this one. We saw what he did in his 5-game span with New Orleans last year. Now he has the reins in Carolina. Heading into 2020, this is more just your opinion, and it won't sway me too hard either way. Who would you rather have in 2020, Bridgewater or Cousins?
Oh, Cousins, no question.
Okay.
Teddy's just so unknown, and I'm rooting for him. I don't think you'll hear from a Vikings fan and be like, "Oh, Teddy, I don't like that guy." People love Teddy around here. He was always a nice guy, and it just seemed like, that injury was so gruesome. It's like great that he could come back from it and do well in his limited time with the Saints. And I'm personally glad he got a chance with the Panthers, and obviously that's like an interesting pairing, him and Christian McCaffrey over there.
Absolutely. Jack White, our guest at this time. You wrote a piece a couple days ago, Vikings among teams that didn't win division in 2019, but are favorites to do so in 2020. Of course, it makes sense, and it happens each year. They seem like, along with Green Bay, I'd assume, as the favorites in the NFC North this year, right? It's a two-team race in my mind.
I think that's safe to say, but you never know about the Bears, and I've heard some people make the case for the Lions.
Yeah.
The Bears still have a really good defense. You don't have to tell Vikings fans that Nick Foles can definitely surprise some people. I think they learned that firsthand in the playoffs. And you got the Lions, who, I mean, Matt Stafford is still a really good quarterback. He's just never really had like a great team around him. And I really like the DeAndre Swift draft pick they had, where maybe he could be like their premier running back. And if that were to happen, like, who knows? I'd say there are a lot of question marks at the NFC North that I think people just don't really like. We're just going to have to see, we're just going to have to wait and see how this plays out. But if I had to take a guess, I would say it's probably the Packers division to lose with the Vikings behind them. I think both the Vikings and the Packers should make the playoffs. But I think right now the Packers might be the better team.
Yeah, I think with the expanded field, you could easily make the case for 3 teams out of the NFC North, as it's one of the, as you said, one of the more question mark filled divisions with a lot of talent and a lot of shakeup that could happen. Couple more for you, Jack. I know we mentioned this off the air, but I want to get it on the air. We do a lot of talking on the show, obviously, about the Jordan Love pick, but we haven't really gotten much outsider's perspective. You cover the Vikings. What was the reaction for you on draft night when the Packers not only drafted Jordan Love, but traded up to do so?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a Vikings fan, obviously you rejoice because it's not really a pick for the short term. But if you really think about it, like, I feel like a lot of people saw that pick and they're like, oh, the Packers are like done now. Like they're going to have like a bad locker room, all this stuff. I'm not so sure of that. I really don't. Like, I just think that Aaron Rodgers could even be more motivated and do better now that they drafted Jordan Love. And I also think, sure, they drafted Jordan Love, which probably isn't a player who's going to start 16 games for you in 2020. But that doesn't mean they're going to lose like 4 more games because of that. They still have a really good front seven. They still have a pretty good offensive line. They still have Devontae Adams. They still have good pieces around Rodgers. I think it's still a good team. I don't think the Jordan Love pick is the end of the world. It was just kind of a head scratcher at the time.
At the time, it definitely was a little bit more sense, but you mentioned that chip on your shoulder. I'm going to make you make a way too early prediction that I'm going to hold you to. Who wins the NFL MVP in 2020? Shoot from the hip here, Jack.
Oh, man. Gosh, yeah. Put me on the spot here, but I'm going to go. I mean, Mahomes is the lame pick, but I'll give you Mahomes, and then I'll go interesting pick. Christian McCaffrey. If that Panthers team improves a lot and he puts up like crazy numbers, I don't know. Anything could happen. That's my dark horse pick.
I like
but
it.
I think it's probably I don't
like
see Lamar Jackson falling off too much, but yeah.
See, that's a question mark for me, but that's a conversation for another day. Jack, you stay safe, my friend, and we'll do it again soon, all right? Really appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
That's Jack White, the managing editor of VikingsWire.com. You can find him on Twitter at JackWhiteMN, as he brings some great Vikings insight. Obviously, the guy knows his stuff. He's cranking out a bunch of articles every day for Vikings Wire. I'm going just through his author page right here as we were chatting, and the guy puts out a ton of content. But producer Kyle will join me now, and he brings up a lot of interesting points surrounding this Dalvin Cook situation. Obviously, Kyle, we talk a lot about how this will affect the Aaron Jones situation, but all in all, he provided some really good context. 13 million seems like the magic number.
Yeah, that was good. And I mean, I don't think we've had a guest on yet who's represented a rival team for the teams that Cream City Central covers. And I mean, he's very well informed. And I don't know many Vikings fans that are very well informed, but Jack White was certainly well informed.
And the other thing he said in there, outside of the Dalvin Cook stuff, was I don't think Justin Jefferson's a replacement for Stephon Diggs. I don't know if that's possible. And that was my thought exactly. And, obviously Vikings fans are mourning the loss of the guy who created the Minneapolis Miracle, but also excited about the arrival of a guy who was on both of our draft boards, Kyle, for the Packers, and Justin Jefferson. That's a scary addition to that wide receiving core.
He was my number one wide receiver that was realistic for the Packers to get.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs, and Jerry Jeudy were. I mean, you could debate all day on which one of those guys was number one, and we'll find out sooner or later who was number one. But I had Justin Jefferson as the number one receiver that the Packers could have reasonably got in the draft. And when the board was starting to fall the way it was, and I'm like, he's going to Minnesota. And then when he went to Minnesota, my heart sank, and I'm like, yeah. So the Vikings got a good one with Justin Jefferson.
Week one, Kevin King and Jair Alexander might have their hands full a little bit. Obviously, it'll be the first real action for Jefferson, but I imagine that guy's prone to shine in year one. Even he's gonna have a big workload on his hands immediately, and I imagine it'll be obviously his role to shine in. And he also mentioned he's going to be playing some slot, which could create some interesting matchups, not only within the division, but throughout the 17-week schedule in the NFL. 16 games, obviously, for the last time this year. But I want to go back to the rookie wide receivers you just mentioned. I've been playing a lot of Madden 19, as you're aware. I finally won the Super Bowl last week.
There you go.
After I won the Super Bowl in 2023 with the Packers, I lost like all of my wide receivers, right? So I signed Henry Ruggs, Jalen Reagor, and CeeDee Lamb. I have all three of them on the Packers right now.
Well, I mean, I would love for that to happen in a magical pipe dream, but I just don't think that that's the case in real life.
We'll see, man. In 2024, when all of their rookie deals expire, maybe we've got a shot.
Maybe.
You're not as optimistic as I am in 4 years,
at all.
are you?
Not at all. No.
That's just too bad. Oh, man. So let's go back a little bit. Obviously, I wasn't able to get into it fully. Jamal Adams. This has kind of been the big headline this weekend, Kyle. He listed 8 teams that he would like to go to. I think there's a couple more teams, maybe even Green Bay included, that might make some sense for him to fall into. I don't know if Green Bay is really, eager to go send New York, a basket of cheese and say, hey, can we open these discussions? But it might make sense. Where do you think Jamal ends up? I think he's obviously one of the biggest, if not the biggest name on the trade block right now.
I mean, I don't think Green Bay makes much sense at all. I mean, cap space. I mean, we have to worry about signing the guys that we have coming up next season. And I mean, I wouldn't say our safety duo is the greatest, but it's not bad. And I just don't think Jamal Adams really fits into what they want to do. I mean, we have Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage as safeties, and obviously the Packers like to run a little more, 3 safety coverage, using a linebacker. So I mean, they're that in that way that could make some sense. I just don't see the Packers trying to pursue a guy like Jamal Adams. I mean, I can't remember the last time the Packers really addressed signing a guy who's had some issues in another spot. Charles Woodson's the last guy that really comes to mind personally, who had some kind of falling out with his previous team. But I really do see Jamal Adams going to Dallas. I mean, he's even come out and said it that he wants to play in Dallas. Obviously, he's from Dallas. I mean, and even still, they have a good safety duo there. But I mean,
right? That's
Jerry Jones can find a way to do anything. And I think Jerry Jones can come up with a way to get Jamal Adams in Dallas.
So what does that do for a guy like HaHa Clinton-Dix or even a guy like Xavier Woods? Obviously
that could be involved in a trade possibly. I mean, you look at a guy like HaHa Clinton-Dix who's
already been traded.
A couple times. I have a metaphor that I want to use that I'm not going to use it in referring to being traded around a lot. But I could see him getting traded, in a trade going, Jamal. Obviously, it'd have to be more than Jamal Adams for HaHa Clinton-Dix. You'd have to involve, draft picks or something in with it. But I could see Jamal Adams, getting traded to Dallas for, whether they do HaHa Clinton-Dix or I'm not sure who their other safety is in Dallas. Xavier Woods. There you go. So there you go.
Yeah,
and Dallas's big issue. I'm sorry to cut you off. One of Dallas's big issues last year was their secondary, and obviously they did improve it a little bit in the draft. But Jamal Adams, Jamal Adams is a huge step up from HaHa Clinton-Dix.
No, absolutely. That's almost a no-brainer, right? But I find a very hard time believing that they'd be able to get a deal done because Jamal Adams wants a contract extension too.
Yeah,
and they don't have the money. I mean, especially once they lock up Dak, they've got so much money pouring into Leal Collins, Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, and Dak Prescott, as well as DeMarcus Lawrence. It's tough, man. It is a tough gamble.
If you were to look at a team who needs secondary, players like Jamal Adams, and who I think they have a lot of cap space. I'm not sure the exact number, but the Philadelphia Eagles is a team that comes to mind, and I believe that was one of the teams on Jamal Adams' list was the Eagles. And the Eagles have had issues with secondary. They had a good secondary when they won the Super Bowl, but they've had a lot of injuries. They've had to go through a lot of guys. So maybe instead of going to Dallas, maybe he goes to the NFC East rival in the Eagles.
That would be an interesting fit. That's actually a fun team you bring up. I don't know where he ends up. I mean, I'm not ready to call the shot yet, but I think Cleveland makes sense, even though they're not on the list. I think Cleveland would be an interesting fit if he would really bring a punch to that secondary. We're talking all NFC though, or I guess not really as I bring up Cleveland, but we talked Vikings, we talked Cowboys. Now we're going to take a break. On the other side, which division is the best in the AFC? That's our Fight Night topic this week. I'll dive into it after this. This is the Alex Strouf Show, presented by Cream City Central.
My first segment I am calling Just the Tip-Off. And that is my best Bob Uecker impression. Tell me what you think. I'll work on it, see if I can get that a little better. But this segment, just the tip off, the name, just the tip. I'm going to give you a few ideas that are just the tip of a good idea. They're not completely fully formed. Some things that are bouncing around in my head. And tip off, of course, it is the first segment of this show. So last night, the Bucks were playing the Lakers. Obviously, LeBron James plays for the Lakers. One thing LeBron has put all over social media the last few months this season is his idea, and I believe he's tried to trademark it, is Taco Tuesday. He started that on social media, him and his family and Anthony Davis and some other players every Tuesday, or as many Tuesdays as possible, get together and have tacos. And he tried to trademark that, and he's trying to make some money off that. And I was thinking, what would Giannis's equivalent of Taco Tuesday be? Obviously, he had his run-in at Bel Air Cantina a few years ago, so probably doesn't want to go the taco route. Maybe he wants to play into his Greek heritage a little bit. So I had the idea for Souvlaki Saturdays. Just an idea, just the tip of an idea. Maybe that'll make its way to Giannis, and he'll run with it. Who knows? Small Ball, Milwaukee Bucks micro podcast, presented by Cream City Central. Download wherever you get your podcasts.
Would like to hear other players' views on this, just because obviously we've really only heard Blake Snell's, strong opinion on this, which I respect him because.
Oh, you haven't heard the Trevor Bauer.
Oh, maybe what has Trevor Bauer said?
So him and his agent Rachel Luba, they've been putting out all these videos with the postponement and kind of how it is from an agency perspective and a player perspective. They've been really just kind of putting everything out there that everybody's afraid to say. And I've been watching a ton of the videos with it. And they put out a whole hour video about the suspected proposal and what the rumors are. And one of the things that made me laugh so hard, and he talked about it, and he's pretty much on the same page as Blake Snell from the aspect of we already agreed to something, and the MLB is basically stepping back and saying, maybe not, maybe we can't do that, which is, I think, what's getting the players the most. However,
shouldn't they expect that? I guess,
no, but
everybody's life is different right now, so why shouldn't theirs be different?
But the thing that has bothered them the most, so the MLB already said, okay, deal that they had put in place at the beginning of the postponement of the season, they said, okay, we will take prorated salary, so already diminishing a chunk of our guaranteed salary depending on how many games we play, and then they agreed on the service time and everything. And now the MLB has essentially said, maybe not, maybe you won't even get that much. And that's the thing that's frustrating, is because they already agreed, and that's something that I never thought they would agree with in the beginning, because it's a money game. Everybody wants the most amount of money they can. And so that's where the players are like, well, what the hell are you doing now? Now you're saying I may not even get half of my salary.
Bernie's Bums, the official Brewers podcast of CreamCityCentral.com. Download wherever you get your podcasts today.
I'm living my best life. My best life.
It's the Alex Strouf Show, presented by Cream City Central.
Right back at it. This is the Alex Strouf Show, presented by Cream City Central. A big thanks to Jack White once again for joining us from VikingsWire.com. Great stuff on all things Vikings. Now we jump into this week's Fight Night topic, which is similar to last week's. Last week was which division in the NFC is the best. We're going to do the AFC this week. And this one's a little bit tougher than last week's. It seemed like there was really only two answers in the NFC, whereas you could probably make a case for three of them in the AFC. I think the only one you really can't make a case for is the AFC East. I don't think the Patriots are going to be anything near what they typically are, although you can bring up a lot with those Patriots. Right? I mean, the year that Tom Brady got hurt, they still went 10-6. I don't even remember. Matt Castle was the quarterback then. and what happened to Matt Castle afterwards. So maybe Jarrett Stidham will get plugged in and just go bananas, like most of us don't expect. Buffalo, I imagine, will be pretty solid. Josh Allen could have another big step in year 3. But outside of that, I don't see a ton of competition. I think Miami's going to be a 4 or 5 win team maximum. And I think New York could surprise some people, but I don't know if they're a playoff team, maybe 7, 8, 9 wins at most. So we're going to go ahead and disclude the AFC East right away. Then we can look at the other 3. And I haven't even made my decision yet, but I will do it off the fly. So let's start with the AFC West. Obviously, we have the defending Super Bowl champions in the Kansas City Chiefs, probably the best team in the conference heading into 2020, expected to probably be the 1 seed of not only the AFC, but the entire league once again, as Kansas City is just that good with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid at the helm. But looking elsewhere in the division, sure, Denver could take a solid step, right? They still have Von Miller on defense. Drew Lock could be ready to take the next big step, and I think he does. I think Drew Lock has a big year in year number 2. Jerry Jeudy's in addition to that offense. Melvin Gordon's in addition to that offense. So Denver could make some progress. And I didn't even mention Noah Fant, so at tight end. So Denver could be interesting, but could be is not good enough for me. I don't think Las Vegas will be very good. Producer Kyle thinks otherwise. He's been on the record about the Raiders, thinking they could maybe be a playoff team with the 7-team format. I'm not so sold on them, as we're not even sold on their quarterback. And, of course, the last team in that division is the Chargers. That's really all I got for you, is just my hands in the air. I don't know what to do with my hands, Ricky Bobby style. The Chargers aren't going to be good. It boils down to that. That defense is fine. That offense isn't. Tyrod Taylor's the quarterback. He's competent. He can be a solid starter. We'll see if we get Justin Herbert, but I don't think we do. I think Los Angeles wins 5 games. So I'm not super high on the AFC West. Let's jump to the AFC East, the AFC North. Baltimore, I think they still run that division. I think Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP, has a very good potential to repeat what he did a year ago, those 13 wins that they had in the regular season. Baltimore absolutely could be the top dog in the AFC, but throughout the rest of the division, it's all question marks. We know Cincinnati won't be very good unless Joe Burrow does what he did at LSU, but that's not going to happen. They win probably, 4 or 5 games? That's realistic. Cleveland's the biggest question mark. After last year, we thought they were going to take the NFL by storm, right? We thought Cleveland was just the next super team. But then they did exactly what the 2011 Eagles did, and that was a big flop on their face. So does Cleveland rebound? And obviously Freddie Kitchens is now out of that situation. But now do they rebound under Gary Stefanski and take that next step? Yeah, I mean, it's very likely that Cleveland could be a playoff team, as they have a ton of talent. Pittsburgh's a team that's also another big question mark. They still have that solid 1-2-3 punch in Ben Roethlisberger, James Conner, and Juju Smith-Schuster. But is that enough? Is that enough? And then we go to what my answer probably will be, strictly for the competitiveness throughout this division, and that's the AFC South. You look at Tennessee. They were only 9-7 a year ago, but they ended up making a run to the AFC Championship game as a 6 seed, and they beat Baltimore. They rode Derrick Henry, and their slim offensive style that really worked. It fit them well. But is Ryan Tannehill coming off of a fluke playoff run, or is that something he can piece together for 16 games in the regular season? Houston, we're all still high on. Obviously, they lose DeAndre Hopkins. They add Brandon Cooks. They still have Deshaun Watson. David Johnson's now there. If he can stay healthy, he's a solid back. Offensively, defensively, probably the second best team in the division behind Indianapolis, who adds Phillip Rivers. They add Jonathan Taylor in the draft. I think Indy's got a very good shot to win the AFC South. While I don't think the Super Bowl team out of the AFC comes out of the AFC South, I think they are the best division where they could really, they have 3 teams. Every team outside of Jacksonville could hold a battle with Baltimore, with Kansas City. If we look at NFC teams like New Orleans and Tampa Bay and San Francisco, I think all those teams could still hang in there. So I'm going to go with the AFC South just in terms of the competitiveness. Maybe not the best team by any means, But I'm going to go with the AFC South. Producer Kyle, why don't you jump in here and give me your thoughts on which division in the AFC is the best? I'm probably going to go AFC South.
I mean, you like you always do. You make good points about everything. I mean,
well, thank you.
You just do. I still think it's the AFC West. I mean, the Chiefs obviously the best team in the.
You don't need to make a case for Kansas.
Maybe even the best team in the NFL.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Probably. I still think. I mean, the Broncos made a ton of improvements. I know you're looking at teams with question marks. Well, I see a bunch of question marks with teams like the Titans, teams like the Texans, especially with the Texans and the Colts. Now the Titans, I mean, they didn't really lose a lot of guys. Derrick Henry is top 3 running back in the league. The dude just a bulldozer.
Oh yeah.
But the Texans, they lost DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know what's going on with Bill O'Brien. He's a
GM and a coach. Apparently,
he's a GM and a coach, and he's not a very good GM, and he's not a really good coach either. I'm so glad Brian Gutekunst decided to stay in Green Bay and not go to Houston, because that was one of his options when.
Yeah.
And the Colts, I know that they added Philip Rivers. They have one of the most underrated offensive lines in the league. They added Jonathan Taylor, who, I mean, being a Badgers fan, that was a great pickup for them. But the issue with Jonathan Taylor is he's had so many miles put on him at Wisconsin. Basically he's a 3-year starter at Wisconsin. I'm just not sold. I'm more sold on Denver than I am Indianapolis.
That's shocking to me.
So, I mean,
and I always boil it down because this really usually works for the most part, right? You don't always win with the argument I'm about to make because you can name a team like San Francisco where Jimmy G didn't do anything terrific, and you can make a case for a team like Tennessee who made a deep run and Ryan Tannehill didn't do anything terrific. But I'm going to look at the quarterbacks always, and I'm more confident in Phillip Rivers leading, a really solid offensive line. I mean, you said underrated. I think they're already a top 5 offensive line without hesitation in Indianapolis. T.Y. Hilton's there. They've got the good 1-2 punch in the backfield. The defense is really solid, right? Darius Leonard is there on defense. I think Indy was already one of the more complete teams last year when Andrew Luck retired suddenly. Jacoby Brissett took over, and they still went 7-9. Now you put a guy like Phillip Rivers in charge. I think Indy's got a really good case to go 9-7, 10-6. And that's not insane because they are that well coached under Frank Reich, and they've got the right pieces in place. And I think this Phil Rivers addition, although it's only a 1-year deal, does put them in the position, a better position than Denver.
And I mean, like I said, you make a good point again with that too. The thing that really concerns me with Phil Rivers is how he's looked in LA the last couple years.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been surrounded with great talent. Melvin Gordon, they had the great two-man backfield. Not a good offensive line. That's the thing that could certainly.
That's the one benefit.
You could argue that an offensive line is more valuable to a quarterback like Phillip Rivers than all of his weapons are. So you could make that argument.
And yeah, I think the weapons are a bit of a downgrade. I don't want to go too dramatic because I mean you could make the comparison between Keenan Allen and T.Y. Hilton, right? I think you could probably make that comparison, and Hilton might win that battle, even though obviously he's getting up there. The weapons are similar, but the offensive line, I mean, it's just totally better. It's just totally better all around. So I think that's a big addition. But looking at Denver, I'm not shocked if they get a 6 or 7 seed. They're not going to win the division.
No.
Las Vegas, I don't know why you're so high on them.
I mean, there's just, I know that I'm not really high on John Gruden, but I feel like there's just something in me that feels like, Vegas, it's their first season. Maybe they pull off a little bit of magic. I don't know. And I know I'm basing my argument off of, hypotheticals, but I mean, I just feel something with Las Vegas that I don't think a lot of other people feel. Maybe that's the reason why, but I just feel something with Vegas. The Raiders.
While I respect it by all means, I just a hunch isn't going to cut it for me, man. A hunch that you have on the Raiders.
And this is why I don't partake in Fight Night, because I don't do enough research. So.
You just sit here and produce, man. That's what you do. All right, let's roll right into hour 2.
Loud, unfiltered, and live nationwide. It's the Alex Strouf Show, presented by Cream City Central.
This
this is where things get a little tricky. I think the team that voted no today is going to be a playoff team.
From the WWSP 90 FM studios in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, here's Alex Strouf.
It is the Alex Strouf Show on a Tuesday. It is the 23rd of June. Already week 4 of the show and hour 2 of this program. I'm Alex Strouf alongside producer Kyle, and he is here with the news. Kyle, what do you got?
So we're still waiting on breaking news from the MLB. The Players Association is supposed to have an agreement in.
So we don't have one yet.
So not yet. They're supposed to have one in by 5 p.m. Eastern, which is 4 p.m. Central.
1 minute
so
ago.
we don't have one. We don't have one in yet. But we will get to it a little bit later. There are some proposals that the MLB is making for 2020 that are some very interesting rule changes that we'll get to when we talk about MLB later in the hour. But I do have unfortunately, I have a lot of COVID-19 related news that I don't really want to share, but, we're the news. So this is my favorite part of the show is telling the news.
We do the news.
The first thing here, 2 Wisconsin Badgers athletes test positive for COVID-19. June 8th was when UW-Madison allowed some student athletes to come back and partake in voluntary workouts, those athletes being those who play football, and I don't know if the Badgers have a men's volleyball team, but definitely women's volleyball for sure. So 2 of those athletes tested positive. The names of the athletes and the sports they play are not announced, but we do know that it would either have to be football or volleyball for those athletes. So and as I know, according to the Wisconsin State Journal, which is where I got the article from, both athletes are in self-isolation. So and no one else they haven't shown any signs of symptoms or anything like that yet. So
interesting. Yeah. You're going to get this. And I mean, we talk about this every time we have COVID news, right? Obviously, when you're bringing athletes together, this is bound to happen. And that's just the scary reality we currently live in. 2 is a good number, though. I like 2 a lot better than 20 or 200. So, I mean, obviously, I hope everybody heals and gets better quickly. And hopefully this is the end of it. It won't be, but hopefully it is.
I mean, right now, last week we talked about University of Texas.
Yeah.
I believe the LSU news and Clemson news came out about, players up in the end of the 20s having it.
Yeah.
So the fact that the Badgers we've only seen 2 so far is good. Yeah. I mean, you'd want it to be 0, but that's just not the reality of how things are going right now.
You got it.
So how about the number 1 tennis player in the world, Novak Djokovic, also testing positive for COVID-19?
Yeah, this came out right before we went live. So he released a statement on Twitter, and it was about a tournament he held over the weekend. And I don't know what country he's in right now. You might know that. But he held a tennis tournament, and a lot of positive cases are now all of a sudden coming back. And if I'm not mistaken, Djokovic was pretty open about, I'm going to live my life like normal. I'm going to do everything normally. And he has a tennis tournament and this happens. So, I mean, nobody wants this to happen to anybody, right? You don't just want anyone to get COVID. You want everybody to be safe and be comfortable doing what they're doing. And clearly, I mean, it's just another harsh reminder of reality that we are still in a pandemic. So, number 1 tennis player in the world, Djokovic, goes down to COVID, but hopefully he bounces right back and quickly.
Just getting this tweet in from Joel Sherman on Twitter, baseball columnist for the New York Post, as well as an MLB insider. It is beyond 5 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. here. No official word yet from the MLB or the Players Association. So it is not, and like you said, just making a joke here. Maybe it's like the trade deadline when deals are made late and not revealed until later or until after the actual deadline has passed, or maybe the MLB or the Players Association had no intentions on saying anything today. So as of right now, as of 4:04 p.m. Central Time, no word from the MLB or the Players Association regarding a start. It has been reported yesterday that the 60-game season that Robert Manfred wants to implement, he's going to implement it, but he still needs approval from the MLB Players Association to do so until we officially have a season. So we'll have more on that in a little bit. But otherwise, no word right now from the MLB or the Players Association. So the incompetency, as I like to say, continues.
Oh, man. Just waiting. I mean, I have Jeff Passan's notifications on, just waiting for something to come through. And we'll get into baseball here in a minute. But anyway, what else you got?
So this coming in during the show, Nuggets star Nikola Jokic tested positive for COVID-19 in his home country of Serbia. So he is over there right now. I don't know if this is his home country or not, but he in Serbia nonetheless. So there you go.
So yeah, this makes it interesting now. Obviously, the Nuggets are in a position to have a far run into these NBA playoffs. And I assume Jokic was supposed to come home sometime within the next 14
so I
days.
have the tweet pulled up from Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN, reporting this along with Brian Windhorst of ESPN. Nuggets star Nikola Jokic tested positive in Serbia, and his return to the U.S. is temporarily delayed. He has been asymptomatic and has not had any symptoms of it since testing positive. This was last week. Jokic is expected to be cleared to travel to Denver within a week.
Oh, okay.
So there you go. So it doesn't look like he has any issues as far as symptoms, which is what we want to hear. So there you go. Which leads me into my next story, which an unknown Western Conference NBA playoff team had 4 positive COVID tests within the last 2 weeks.
You are all over the COVID.
My guess, I know, I'm sorry. This is the last COVID story I have. My guess is this unnamed Western Conference NBA playoff team is the Denver Nuggets. However, what could also lead me away from that is Jokic has been over in Serbia, likely away from his Western Conference teammates. I don't think Jamal Murray or Paul Millsap is over in freaking Serbia playing basketball.
Well, Jamal Murray already had it, didn't he?
I don't know. I can't keep track.
I can't keep track anymore, So I thought Jamal Murray already had it, but I might have just made that up.
You might have just made that up.
I thought he had it. Maybe, I'm probably wrong. Who knows? But
so there you go.
Interesting.
No more COVID news for the day, unless something breaking comes.
Look, I mean, when these teams go to Orlando, this is going to happen, right? Players are going to have to miss games because of COVID, and it's just going to be a new reality in sports for at least the rest of the calendar year. So, man, oh man.
And with Florida seeing a spike in cases, I mean, over the last couple of days.
No, and these concerns these players have are real, man.
Yeah.
And obviously we see some players backing out, just saying, it's not worth the risk. Especially there was a Wizards player that, and I can't remember who said it. But
David Bertans said he's not going to be playing.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? How many minutes was he going to play anyway? So the risk outweighs the reward, and he made the right call, at least in my mind, right? If a Bucks player says, I'm not going to go because of COVID, then maybe I'll rethink that. But when you're a Wizards player, you're already almost mathematically eliminated. It makes sense.
So we haven't had much Antonio Brown news in recent weeks. He's been kind of quiet. But Michael Silver on the NFL Network today says that the Seahawks and Ravens have had internal discussions about signing Antonio Brown. Which for a Packers fan, if the Seahawks were to sign Antonio Brown, that sucks.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the Ravens fit is a really interesting one. Locker room wise, I don't know. Obviously, he was a lifetime Steeler at one point, and now go to their rival would be kind of interesting. But on the Seahawks note, put him across from DK Metcalf. I mean, that is a receiving core that Russell Wilson's going to win the MVP with. I think Wilson is my pick to win the MVP, my early pick. I made Jack White pick one early. I think Russell Wilson is my early pick for NFL MVP this year. You add Antonio Brown to that offensive mix, that becomes really, really interesting, Kyle.
Now, obviously, with the thing with Antonio Brown is you got to cut through a lot of red tape with Antonio Brown.
Oh yeah,
he's likely facing fines and suspensions. You're looking at a guy kind of like what you saw with the Browns when they signed Kareem Hunt last season. Is you get him for the back half of the season, which is the most important part of the season, is the back half. So you're looking at fines and suspensions when dealing with a guy like Antonio Brown. Obviously, you're dealing with Antonio Brown himself, but when you make the case for the Seahawks did sign Josh Gordon last year, so they aren't opposed to signing players with off the field issues. So
yeah, it's actually not a bad point.
Definitely something to watch.
Yeah, now Josh Gordon has also applied for reinstatement, which we'll see what happens.
As well as Martavis Bryant did as well, and that was he applied for reinstatement yesterday.
All very talented wide receivers that used to play in the AFC North. How interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's something with the AFC North. I don't know.
Good stuff, man.
Maybe the AFC North isn't the best division in the AFC.
Well, we didn't go that direction. Neither of us did.
I know.
But they might be, man. That's an interesting question that I need to think 2 more days about. But For the fight night topic, which I didn't even mention, comment below. You can join me on Thursday. We will have somebody come join us for fight night. Is that the news, Kyle? That all you got?
I got one more.
Oh, hit me.
I had 5 headlines to actually maybe 6. I don't know.
I got 6. Yeah.
Because news just kept coming in.
Kept rolling in.
So NASCAR drivers rally around Bubba Wallace at Talladega after, unfortunately, a noose was found in Wallace's garage on Sunday. Now, the race was not – it happened yesterday. The race was postponed from Sunday to Monday because of rain. And late Sunday night, one of, I believe, Wallace's crew members found a noose in his garage, which is just – we've heard all the news about, the whole George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and Rashard Brooks. We've heard this all. Everybody knows the news.
Yep.
And just hearing this, and obviously Bubba Wallace has come out. He's the only African American racer in NASCAR, at least in their top circuit. And then he encourages the ban of Confederate flags at all NASCAR events. So obviously he's got a lot of hate from this. Obviously, it sucks to see. I do have a video from the race yesterday, and this is when all the other NASCAR drivers are rallying around Bubba Wallace. Let me pull that up here. We can take a look at that.
All of NASCAR's drivers have rallied around Bubba Wallace, the NASCAR Cup Series lone black driver, after what happened here yesterday afternoon. The drivers, led by reigning Cup Series champion Kyle Busch in green, and their crews, the entire garage area, has rallied around Bubba Wallace and the number 43 today. Because yesterday afternoon, a noose was found hanging in the garage stall of Bubba's race car. In the NASCAR Cup garage area, a secure area where access is limited to competitors, officials, and track staff. A despicable act by someone flying directly in the face of NASCAR's efforts to build a culture that is diverse, equal, and welcome. When that window net goes up later today, racing is the great equalizer. Everybody's 6'4", 240 pounds. Everybody has 600 horsepower. No one is white, black, brown, or yellow. They are all racers, and they are all our heroes.
So just some, super emotional.
Yeah, if that doesn't give you goosebumps.
Seeing all the drivers and then seeing, I'm not sure who the announcer is. I'm not really a big NASCAR guy myself, but I think the big thing that really got to me was everybody has 600 horsepower. Everybody's 6'4", 240. That was just like, we're all the same. That was just, that's the big takeaway I got from that, and it was very well done by NASCAR. And
yeah, you got to give NASCAR credit, man.
Yeah.
Given everything that's gone on the last, 2-3 weeks, even if that. Obviously, the Confederate flag banning, and then Sunday there was a plane flying over Talladega saying defund NASCAR. Bubba Wallace obviously has been outspoken, and rightfully so, and NASCAR has done nothing but stand behind him. This sucks. What happened, you suck. Whoever did that, you suck. Let me be blunt about that. And they're going to find that guy. They have to. They literally will.
They said whenever they find out whoever it was, they will never be in NASCAR in any shape or form again. So they get a lifetime ban from NASCAR is what the penalty should be.
And what I find interesting is the person that did that is likely walking in that crowd. And maybe I'm wrong there, but that was racetrack, assistants. Those are people, in the garages. Obviously, all racers were behind him there. We'll see. This is an interesting ongoing situation, but we will see.
Yeah, and just to kind of wrap this up here, I did listen to Pat McAfee, his podcast, his take on this. When you look at how secure these places, these garages are, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in these garages. Whoever was able to put the noose in the garage, they had some form of access that nobody else gets. So how did they get into there? It has to be somebody who's very, very close to the situation. So that's what I think makes it even worse.
Yeah, and on that note, I wonder with no fans around what the security looks like. Is it different? Obviously, McAfee, I know you and I were talking off the air, alluded to how he owned a car at one point and he couldn't even get in the garage. So I wonder if the security is different, obviously with no fans and only really people that should be there are there. So
yeah, and I believe a lot of that security is when you look at a NASCAR event, there's a lot of people there who aren't necessarily sober at the time. I'll just keep it that way.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I mean, when you're not dealing with fans, or you're dealing with, I think 5,000 fans might have been allowed at that race. Nobody's allowed in the infield, so I mean, the security threat is lower. So maybe that's how it was easier for somebody to get into Bubba Wallace's garage at that time. So
cool.
That's my wrap on the news. That's what I got. So a little bit depressing, a little bit uplifting, and a lot of bit of COVID. So there you go.
Yeah, a lot of bit of COVID, he says. Cool. That's the news. That's producer Kyle. We're going to take a time out. On the other side, we're going to dive into all things MLB. And Olivia Pelishek will join us a few minutes into the segment. So this is the Alex Strouf Show presented by Cream City Central.
Talking MLB proposal for the 2020 season.
Dude, I am so fired up about this. Like, I have gone on so many rants to the people around me who couldn't care less about it, but this whole thing has just got me in a tizzy.
So for the people that don't know, maybe me, how about you give us some of the details about what they proposed?
Okay. So I'll lay down kind of, this is what we know or is rumored to be on the proposal. Obviously, stuff hasn't officially been said, but the four main things that I've heard at least are to be an 82-game season, the playoffs would be expanded, there'd be the universal DH, and then the 50-50 revenue split. And so I guess we can kind of go down the lines. 82 games, it makes sense. So if we start on July 4th, it will just, and the other thing that I forgot to write down is it'll most likely be like region play. So you'll be playing only your division and then maybe interleague games with the division in your region. So like the AL Central would play the Brewers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's tough because it definitely makes you feel like the season would have an asterisk next to it.
I think it would inevitably. I mean, it is a shortened season. Any shortened season is going to have an asterisk next to it. And much less the circumstances around it. Like, this season will be talked about for years if it does go through, which, to be honest, I don't know if it will. But
Bernie's Bums, the official Brewers podcast of CreamCityCentral.com. Download wherever you get your podcasts today. We welcome you back inside the Alex Strouf Show here, presented by Cream City Central. And you know what? The time has come for me to talk about Major League Baseball because, as I've mentioned a lot, I'm really sick of it, man. I'm just to the point where, and if you follow me on Twitter yesterday, I said just cancel the damn season. I mean, are the players even going to show up? And we were supposed to hear from the MLBPA about 20 minutes ago. We have yet to hear anything on their response to Commissioner Rob Manfred imposing a 60-game schedule. Still nothing as far as I'm aware, and I'm just double-checking everybody's favorites app of Twitter, of course. And I've got nothing thus far. But Olivia Pelishek, who is the co-host of Bernie's Bums here on Cream City Central, joins us now, and she's going to give us some much better perspective than I will, and probably less pissed off ramble. I see a black screen, but maybe we've got her audio. Olivia, we got you? Well, we'll work on that. We'll work on getting Olivia. Wait, I think we got her. I don't know. Technology, man. Sometimes it likes to work and sometimes it doesn't. But still nothing on the MLB side. We assume the Players Association will approve what the commissioner is going to impose. I mean, that is just the assumption given the name, the place and time, and when and where, if you will, as they've been saying throughout. So we'll take a look at your Twitter poll. Who is to blame for the hesitation to start the 2020 season? Only 8.2% say the Players Association, 50% say Madfred and the owners, and 41%, which is where producer Kyle and I both went, say both the Players Association and the and Manfred and the owners. All of the above are to blame, which is fair. That is where our Twitter poll stands, open for about another half an hour at Cream City Central. And do we have Olivia, Kyle?
I don't have her yet. We're working on that, so we're working on getting that in.
Technical difficulties are fun, man.
Yeah, I mean, we had to deal with them a little bit last week, dealing with them a little bit today. But
Well,
you know,
if we got to go to a phone interview, we can go to a phone interview.
well, it looks like she popped back up here, so let's
give her a try.
Let's give her a second try.
Technology is lovely.
Haven't heard any other news yet as far as MLB. We're still
I'm not
waiting
seeing
on.
anything.
Yeah, so this is just, I mean, leave it to the most incompetent North American sports organization to make us wait an extra 20 freaking minutes to get this in. Still looks like we're waiting on it a little bit. I do see her screen popping up here, so we'll give it a couple extra. Here we go. Let's try.
Hold on a minute. On a side note, before we get to MLB stuff, the FBI just released a statement regarding the NASCAR investigation. And the noose found in garage number 4 was in the garage as early as October 2019.
So what are you saying? Hold on a second. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so this is from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI learned that garage number 4, where the noose was found, was assigned to Bubba Wallace last week. The investigation also revealed evidence, including authentic video confirmed by NASCAR, that the noose was found in garage number 4 was in that garage as early as October 2019. Although the noose is now known to have been in garage number 4 in 2019, nobody could have known Mr. Wallace would be assigned to garage number 4 last week. So that is.
So are we saying that noose has been in there for a couple months? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. At least that's what it sounds like at this point, which is a really what?
Wow.
We're supposed to know how to respond to breaking news, Kyle, but I have not.
I don't know how to respond to that. That's like,
wow. Okay, we'll get to that more, I guess, when we wrap up. But let's get to Olivia if we have her, Kyle, and we'll switch gears back to baseball as we kind of await for, we wait for something from the MLBPA. But I know Olivia's well informed on this, and we have her, Kyle.
We still don't have her yet. She is working on so a little bit of technical difficulty, which is fine. I mean, being a live show, you got to deal with that. So, I guess we can stay on the NASCAR note then. Yeah.
And I'll read the whole release here.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. Yeah.
On Monday, 15 FBI special agents conducted numerous interviews regarding the situation at Talladega Superspeedway. After a thorough review of the facts and evidence surrounding this event, we have concluded that no federal crime was committed. And then the following, which I've already read, and then it ended with the decision not to pursue federal charges is proper after reviewing all available facts and all applicable federal laws. We offer our thanks to NASCAR, Mr. Wallace, and everyone who cooperated with this investigation. So it was there as early as October 2019.
That's just that just doesn't make any sense. I don't know how does no one discover
why? So Talladega management, at least in my opinion, is who's to blame here. I mean, how in the hell do you allow something to hang in a garage, not for, let alone 4 hours? We're talking 8 months, Kyle. We're talking it's been there 8 months. I mean, who the hell is in charge of Talladega Speedway that didn't look at that and say, that's pretty messed up. There's something wrong with that. Why the hell is there a noose hanging in garage stall 4? Maybe we should do something about that.
Well,
and yet it's been 8 months and nobody's done a damn thing. And now it comes to this, which apparently they're just boiling this down to a coincidence or irony or whatever have you, that Bubba Wallace was assigned the stall.
So when obviously, they go through Talladega and Miami, they go through all these tracks once a year. Do the same drivers get the same garage each time?
No, they're assigned a week out. They were assigned a week out. So Wallace was assigned this garage number 4 last week.
The only possible thing I can think of is that, well, you wouldn't even know the garage assignments that far out in October of 2016 or October of 2019, especially when we've had the season delayed for months because of COVID. I cannot other than just leaving it there for 6 months or whatever you said, 8 months. I can't think of any other reason why a noose would be just sitting in the garage for that period of time other than someone just forgot about it, which, okay, maybe. But how do you forget about that? So I don't know. I really don't know. We do have Olivia back now, so we'll get away from the NASCAR.
We'll switch gears. Everything's confusing me today, man. Baseball's been doing it for 2 weeks, and now NASCAR's doing it. But we've got Olivia Pelishek, who's the co-host of Bernie's Bums. Hi, Olivia. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Everything's good on our end. This whole NASCAR thing's really blowing me away all of a sudden, though. But let's go to baseball. It's 4:25. We were supposed to have something from the MLBPA 25 minutes ago, and we don't. Maybe we're just waiting. Maybe we don't have a response. I mean, it's been a crazy 2 weeks. Break this down for me. What's going through your mind?
I think crazy is the only way you can describe it. This has been, I think Trevor Bauer said it first. It's been a complete slap fight between the two sides for months now. And, they made a deal back in March on how things would go if we were to restart the season. And then, the commissioner and the owners decided to go kind of against that. And ever since then, it's been a complete mess. And it's been going back and forth. And the worst part about it, it's been going back and forth over the media, which is just completely screwed everything over.
Yeah, it's been a mixture of press releases and tweets. I mean, that has really been the slap show that you refer to. So bring me up to speed on this when and where statement, right? Immediately we thought, okay, the players are all in. I'm kind of leaning that this when and where thing isn't real anymore, right? I don't think that's really the case with a lot of these players. What do you put into the when and where that we've been seeing the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, so I think some of that may have gotten misinterpreted through the new proposals that have come up within the last week, but I think it originally started as something where, because Rob Manfred kind of came out and said, well, screw this, I'm just going to mandate a season. And the players kind of took that as, okay, then fine, just tell us when and where we're going to play, like we'll be there. So I think that kind of started off because I think Rob had made some mention towards, well, I'm just going to mandate a season, this is pointless. And so the players were like, finally, let's just play a game. I don't understand why we're going back and forth.
Olivia Pelishek's my guest, co-host of Bernie's Bums here on Cream City Central. So Olivia, all these changes, implementation of DH in both leagues, extra innings with a runner starting on second, which we've seen in the minor leagues before. What are some of these changes we might see in the CBA? Are you a fan of these? Are you not a fan of these? Are you a traditionalist in the sense of the universal DH? What are your thoughts on some of these proposed changes?
Yeah, personally, I'm a huge fan of the DH. Just being a Brewers fan, we've seen a lot of players go down in the batter's box numerous times. I have nightmares about it, but I'm a huge fan about it. I mean, granted, you miss the moments like Brandon Woodruff hitting a home run in the NLCS. Those are moments, though, that happen 1 in every million pitches. So I think, I love that. That should be included in the new CBA. I think a lot of the players are on board with it. The extra innings thing, I may be different for my generation. I like to see a longer than 3-hour baseball game. I like things to drag out a little bit more. But if it means that I'll be able to see baseball again this season, I'm not going to knock it, but definitely something I wouldn't want to see full time.
So this 60-game season, we're assuming will be implemented and will be happening. Is this the right number?
It wasn't the number I was hoping for. I thought for sure we were going to stick with 82.
Yeah.
And then one thing led to another, and we're at 60. But honestly, it's higher than I thought the owners were going to go. When kind of started this kind of to boil down a little bit within the last week, I thought we were going to maybe see 55 at most. So to see 60 was actually a surprise to me, but it'll be interesting to see how teams react to that and how the managers will coach around that.
Last one for you, Olivia. We appreciate you taking some time. We had our Twitter pull up today. Who do you blame for this hesitation that we've seen? We put Manfred and the owners, the Players Association, all of the above. Where does your blame lie? I know you're not a big Rob Manfred girl.
I'm not a big Rob Manfred person, but I would put most of it on Rob, but also the players have done some stuff where they've prolonged things a little bit more than they should have.
Absolutely.
But I put most of the blame on the MLB for sure.
Okay, good answer. Now plug Bernie's Bums for us. Obviously, you and Ryan doing some great stuff. Tell us where we can get it and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, make sure you check it out. We're on Apple and Spotify. We post podcasts every single Wednesday. We have a ton of interviews. We've talked to a lot of minor league guys, most recently Max Lazar. So make sure you check it out. We have a lot of fun over there, and it's always a good time.
Cool, Olivia. We'll do it again soon. All right, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
That's Olivia Pelishek, co-host of Bernie's Bums here on Cream City Central, giving us some insight into this whole MLB situation. We had a little technical difficulties at the beginning, so we had to go a bit short with her. But great stuff nonetheless in the time we did have with Olivia. We are going to take a timeout. On the other side, we're going back to football because talking about all this NASCAR and baseball stuff is just pissing me off. So we're going back to football next. I'm going to tell you the top 5 teams in do or die mode in 2020. That's next on the Alex Strouf Show.
You look at teams like the 49ers, and they literally did a 180 in terms of performance and their ability to just beat the crap out of teams. And then you go, okay, well, why shouldn't I expect that from my team? And I didn't expect that from the Packers this year. I really didn't. Now, of course, we all have high expectations for next season.
I think there's always been a sense of high expectation as a fan. I mean, even last year when, we came off of the 7-9 season when Rodgers was out half the year, the feeling was, oh, Rodgers is back. We should do better. That clearly just wasn't the case. There's always going to be a high level of expectation when you're the Green Bay Packers, just because of the history. There's a winning culture in this area. And LaFleur knew that too coming into his job. He knew that he had to, be successful right away. Not necessarily saying he had a short leash, but knowing that if he's not successful, he won't make it out of his first contract. So I think he accomplished that with flying colors. I mean, 13-3, you'll take that every year. Obviously, you want it to end with a Super Bowl, but 13-3 is not something to look past. It's a big deal when you win 75% of your games.
That was a short clip from the Lambeau Lead, Cream City Central's only Packers podcast. Make sure to check it out today.
He is the top 5 right tackle in the league. There's no question. If you would have told me the Packers could have signed a top 5 right tackle in the league, I'd been like, yes, please do it. But clearly Brian Gutekunst had other ideas, and we've seen guys leave the Packers and then kind of fade away. Maybe 1 or 2 years later, perfect example, Clay Matthews got released by the Rams. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Demarius Randall, Deshaun Kaiser. There's been a few guys who kind of just faded away after they left the Packers, and that tells me that Brian Gutekunst does have a good gauge as to where his roster's at. Yeah. So the argument for leaving Bulaga alone, letting him go to the Chargers, is because, let's say the Packers have $30 million to spend, and they did not spend it on Bulaga. They actually saved money sending Bulaga out to the Chargers, or not sending him, but letting him walk. And signing Christian Kirksey and Rick Wagner together, those two players, their contracts equals $24 million. So they save roughly about $6 million. And you know what? They even add, let's just throw Mercedes Lewis contract in there. It's $2.25 million. So you still got looking at about 3.5. So it's interesting to see kind of the way these numbers work. And Bulaga's contract alone would have covered all 3 of those players. So I think that's where Brian Gutekunst does the math.
The Lambeau Lead, Cream City Central's official Packers podcast. Download wherever you get your podcasts.
Back here in the Alex Strouf Show, I'm Alex Strouf. Hi, hope you're doing well. We've got more NASCAR stuff coming up because this just continues to develop. We'll do that in a little bit. Hopefully we'll have something on the baseball end here before the end of the show in about 26 minutes. But I wanted to get into the segment all day because at the top of the show, about an hour and a half ago, we talked about the Dallas Cowboys and how they are all in on 2020. Now, they're not on this list. They're on the outside looking in. But I've put together a list of 5 teams who are in do or die mode in 2020. Now, if they don't get to, and the measuring stick might move for each of these teams, but if they don't get to where that measuring stick is, they might not get there for several years. And I think I'll go ahead and dive a little bit into each measuring stick as we go through the 5 teams. But let's go ahead and start with team number 5. That is the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders obviously are now in year 3 of this John Gruden experiment, and it hasn't been working out. They went 7-9 a year ago, but now they're moving to Las Vegas. They're in year 3 of Gruden. They don't know if they really believe in Derek Carr. Their offense continues to completely shake up outside of that one position, right? Running back keeps changing. Wide receivers are looking differently. Darren Waller had a great year at tight end last year. He's back for 2020, and behind him is Jason Witten, which is interesting. But this is the year that the Raiders need to make the playoffs, as producer Kyle thinks they will. If they don't, something's got to change, whether that be quarterback, whether that be coach, whether that be both. Something's got to give in 2020 for Las Vegas. So they are number 5 on my list for do or die teams in 2020. Now, we move the measuring stick here. These are conference championship games, if not the Super Bowl, for the next 4 teams. Because this is the last chance, in my opinion, for these next 4 teams to get to the Super Bowl, maybe for the next several years. And maybe all of these teams have one more year maximum after 2020, but it's not looking that way to me. My team at number 4 is the Green Bay Packers. And we've talked a lot about this over the last few weeks, but I'll give you a brief rundown. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers' window is closing. This isn't a secret. Aaron Rodgers' window is closing. The Packers drafted Jordan Love. We've seen the injuries. Now, obviously, there's a competent backup, or at least we can hope, for the Green Bay Packers behind Aaron Rodgers. But let's remember that number of either restricted or unrestricted free agents in the summer of 2021. That number is 33. There is 33 guys under contract right now that will be going without a contract after 2020. Now, a lot of these guys probably won't make the roster, but there's a lot of big names who are looking for new contracts after 2020. Aaron Jones, David Bakhtiari, Kenny Clark, Kevin King, Jamal Williams. I mean, there's a lot of big names that the Packers won't be able to throw money at. So this might be the best looking roster you have in the next half decade. And it's time for Green Bay to make that push toward the Super Bowl, which they got close a year ago. They were in the NFC title game, but in 2020, Super Bowl or nothing for Green Bay is the way that I view it. Let's move on to number 3. It's a team we talked about earlier, last hour, the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts have signed Phil Rivers to a 1-year deal. Jacoby Brissett also entering the final year of his contract. Now, the goal for Philip Rivers was obviously, the 1-year deal, and let's figure it out. Maybe one more year after that. It's not a contract thing for Philip Rivers, but Philip Rivers is still, 38, 39, 40 years old? He's got to plug in there behind that really solid offensive line and make it work. Quentin Nelson, Darius Leonard, contract years. And it is a do or die type situation for Indy. The division's open. They can win it. But that's really not what they're shooting for. If Andrew Luck was their quarterback last year, Super Bowl expectations were everywhere in June and July a year ago for Indianapolis. Not much has changed. Now they have a quarterback with experience, a guy that's been in an AFC title game before, and a guy that can absolutely lead them to the promised land in Philip Rivers. It's a do or die year for Indy. Number 2, I have New Orleans here. Now, this is an interesting one, and there's going to be a lot of reasoning behind this that you don't realize. And a lot of these have to do with contracts, yes, but this is a do or die year for New Orleans. Drew Brees is 41 years old. That could be a fact in and of itself. In and of itself could easily be a reason. Drew Brees is 41. Now, they signed Jameis Winston to a 1-year deal where if Drew Brees goes down for a couple weeks like he did last year, they've got a guy who knows how to win football games and knows how to throw 30 interceptions. And touchdowns, really what I should have said there. But nonetheless, New Orleans also has the following the following guy will be a free agent and is going to be looking for huge money. Alvin Kamara is a free agent after 2020. And he's with Aaron Jones and Dalvin Cook, and they'll be looking for big money, will Alvin Kamara. And while he might stay in New Orleans, this team's running out of time. It's just as flat put as that. Because look at that division. Atlanta's still solid, no matter what anybody says. Atlanta is still solid. Tampa Bay has Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Gronkowski, and a solid defense. This division no longer just belongs to New Orleans. They, number one, have to go win the division. And number two, they've got to make the Super Bowl if they want to put another ring on Drew Brees' finger. All the records he's breaking, great. Those are great. But if he's not winning titles, it's an underwhelming career for Drew Brees, who is maybe a top 5 quarterback ever. Definitely a top 10 quarterback ever. And the window is also closing for him, but much faster than it is on Aaron Rodgers for the 41-year-old Brees. He'll be 42 by the Super Bowl next year, folks. He's got a January birthday. He'll be 42 if they make the Super Bowl. He's running out of time. New Orleans, it's a do-or-die year for them. But the team that is above all else in this do-or-die list, the team that has to absolutely play to their absolute peak in 2020 because this is their last shot. It's Pittsburgh. It is the Pittsburgh Steelers in the number one do-or-die spot. Number one question for Pittsburgh is, can Ben Roethlisberger stay healthy? We don't know if he can anymore. He's 38 years old. He's been playing at a high level for a long time, don't get me wrong. And they still have that 1-2-3 punch in Ben Roethlisberger, Juju Smith-Schuster, and James Conner. However, those other two, Juju and James, are both staring at contract years. And James Conner, although he won't get Christian McCaffrey or even Alvin Kamara money, he's still going to get a big contract if it's not from Pittsburgh. And Juju Smith-Schuster, you could probably make the case as a top 10 wideout in this league. So offensively, at least, Pittsburgh is in a do-or-die year. And this is the year that, just like Drew Brees, if Ben Roethlisberger wants a second title, it's the year they have to do it. And although Pittsburgh isn't the favorite in their division due to Baltimore being there, there's an expanded playoff field, as I mentioned often. 7 teams from each conference are going to make the playoffs in 2020. Pittsburgh absolutely has the talent to do so. They would have made it last year had there been a 17 panel, 17 field. But there wasn't, and there is this year. So they have to go out and do it again. Go 9-7, go 10-6, and punch their ticket into the playoffs. But they're not looking at making the playoffs. They're looking at winning a Super Bowl because that's what Pittsburgh does. And with the window closing and Mike Tomlin's been there, is he still the answer? We don't know that. This is a do-or-die year for many, many pieces in Pittsburgh. And if they don't at least go far, an AFC championship game would suffice. They don't at least do that, a lot's got to change. And that could be Tomlin. That could be Roethlisberger. James Conner and Juju could walk. This is the end of the Pittsburgh Steelers, almost dynasty. I wouldn't quite go that far, but a team that's been consistently in the playoffs, consistently a tough team to beat. That era is over after 2020, unless they make something happen in 2020. They've got to prove that they've still got it in 2020. This is a do-or-die year for Pittsburgh, and that's why they come ahead of New Orleans, Indianapolis, Green Bay, and Las Vegas for me. Those are my top 5 do-or-die teams in 2020 for the NFL season, because those are the teams that have the most to prove. Producer Kyle, what do you think of that list and any teams I left off by chance?
I noticed a common theme with your list. I have it on my handy-dandy note sheet here.
Yeah.
You look at Dallas Cowboys, Saints, Colts, Packers, Steelers. 4 out of those.
Well, Las Vegas was my 5. Dallas didn't make it.
Oh, you switched. Okay, I have mine on your notes. You have Dallas, so you switched it.
Yeah.
Okay. 4. That still makes my point valid here. 4 out of your 5, your top 4, Saints, Colts, Packers, and Steelers. What is the common theme with their quarterback?
They're old.
Exactly. That's exactly. I mean, you make. And
even in the case of Las Vegas, they don't know if Derek Carr's the answer. I mean,
yeah.
If he doesn't have a solid year, I wouldn't be shocked if he wasn't there next year, or at least the starter.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a coaching thing for a lot of these. It's a quarterback thing for a lot of these, and there's some contractual ties for big pieces on those offenses. Excuse me. So yeah, it is a common theme. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, and even just looking at the Packers, I would even put the Packers at 1. over the Steelers, because I just don't think the Steelers. I mean, they play in even if we don't look at the AFC North as being the hardest division in the AFC, it's still a tough division. They have an up and coming team with the Bengals who just drafted their future of their franchise.
Yeah,
the Ravens are the second best team in the AFC, and the Browns are not. The Browns aren't a bad team. They have a lot of great talent. They just need to figure out the coaching. I would put the Packers at number 1 as do or die, because you have Aaron Rodgers, who is. He's up there. He's late 30s. You have their quarterback waiting in the wings with Jordan Love. You have a guy with Matt LaFleur who wants to change the offensive scheme, which is against whatever Aaron Rodgers wants to do. Aaron Rodgers, no matter how much Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to admit it, Aaron Rodgers wants to run the offense he's run with Mike McCarthy for the last 15 years of his career. That's just the way it is. When you do something for 15 years and it has been fairly successful for that time period, you want to keep doing it. Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to have the load taken off of him with guys like A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, Tyler Ervin, and the new power run scheme that Matt LaFleur wants to impose on the team. And with all the free agents the Packers are going to have, Kenny Clark, Kevin King, Aaron Jones, David Bakhtiari, I mean, those are valuable contributors. The top 5 free agents are valuable contributors that were huge parts of the team last year, are going to be huge parts of the team this year. I personally think the number 1 do or die team, number 1 team in do or die mode, I should say, is the Green Bay Packers. Because
I think those top 4 are interchangeable. I mean, I ranked them at 4. I know initially the list you have, I think I might have them at 2. I moved all these teams around a few times.
You did, okay.
Before I slotted, I think they're interchangeable, really. Look, I mean, the common theme prevails in that sense, right? Old quarterbacks running out of time. And maybe Green Bay does have the biggest contractual issues, right? I think Indianapolis has quite a few that you can look at as well. But Green Bay, they were there a year ago. So I mean, it is a do or die year. I think if they don't at least get back to the NFC Championship game, it won't only be us saying that's a failure of a year. It'll be them too. I mean, they want to get back there. They have the expectation of getting back there. So I think you make a really solid point. How about we do our last break and we come back on the other side? We've got an update on the NASCAR thing, and then we will wrap up. How's that sound?
Well, I mean, I guess it is up to me technically. So
you press the button, so I guess I can ask you questions.
So I'm going to press the buttons. We're going to go to break, and we'll come right back. How's
that sounds good. This is the Alex Strouf Show, presented by Cream City Central.
I'm going to read you a quote from one of Giannis's teammates, and then, using your wealth of superstar NBA experience, you are going to read between the lines and tell us if we can actually learn anything from what this teammate has said. So first up, this is from Pat Connaughton on March 31st, so just a few weeks ago. He says, obviously the city of Milwaukee, the team, everyone wants Giannis to be here forever. But Giannis has put himself in a position to provide for his family from growing up with nothing in Greece. I don't think you can fault Giannis for whatever decision he ends up making, that he believes is the best decision for him, his family, the people who are closest to him.
Yo, Pat's a smart dude. Pat's trying to get on teams with Giannis in the future wherever Giannis ends up. Pat is not trying to ruffle feathers. Pat is giving a massage right there. That's my gut.
And can you blame him?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, he's a 6'5" white dude who relies on his athleticism. Yeah, I mean, how much of a career does he have left?
There's a ceiling. There's a ceiling. Yeah, man. Of course.
All right, Pat's playing the long game. Small Ball, Milwaukee Bucks micro podcast, presented by Cream City Central. Download wherever you get your podcasts.
Right back here on the Alex Strouf Show. Oh, you're gonna try to bring us out of the break now? Who do you think you are?
I don't know. I guess I tried being host for a half a second and it didn't work.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut you down on that one. See, I'm very nice to you. I don't shut you down on a lot of things when I probably should. That one though, you overstepped.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It's okay, man. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead and say what you're gonna say, producer.
So we have some updates. I mean, we just talked about the MLB, which I know we don't really want to talk about anymore. We're sick and tired of talking about it.
So I have the John Heyman tweet up. You want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead and read it first.
Yeah, so John Heyman, and he's where? MLB Network, I believe? Yes, MLB Network and WFAN in New York. MLB and the Players Union are in talks now with no major holdups known Going to be hard to make that 5 p.m. deadline, though. That was a joke. He's getting ripped to shreds. People
myself
don't
included. I didn't.
Yeah,
I
you
just,
sent it to me.
I just didn't think about it. But it is.
He's making
I mean,
a joke. Yes.
not the joke part is the MLB and the players union are in talks with whatever they need to talk about to finish up right now.
We're going to get a 60-game season. We're going to get a 60-game season. It'll be implemented. We'll have full details by Thursday.
Because, I mean, Bob Nightingale tweeted out a little bit earlier. He said MLB and the Players Association continue to exchange ideas with health and safety protocols. There are no major snags in the decision, but the union has informed the MLB it plans to play, which we knew last night. The union is just what's holding back is the health and safety protocols, which I don't think anybody really knows about yet, but I would assume it's, social distancing and all that crap.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So that's enough MLB. If you want to get to our Twitter poll, we'll do it again and talk about the Twitter poll today. But this is the last thing I'm going to talk about the MLB until Thursday. So
yes, I'm good with that. Take a final look here. I'll pull it up if you don't already have it up.
I am getting to it. Yeah. So the MLB Twitter poll is actually a little bit closer than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So our Twitter poll today: who do you blame for the MLB's hesitation to start the 2020 season? Options were the Players Association, Manfred/owners. That's one, the owners and the commissioner together, or both. I voted both.
I also did.
But right now, we'll call it off here. Only 3 minutes to go in the poll. But 52% say Manfred and the owners. That is the leading vote getter. Both is 40%, and 8% say just the Players Association. I'm kind of surprised I got any votes to begin with, to be honest. But I did throw it on there just in case somebody did think that way, and 8% of our voters did in fact think that it was mainly due to the Players Association. I think Olivia had a great take on it before. Mainly the Manfred and the owners is their blame, mainly on them. But you can put a little bit of it on the Players Association as well, and that's why I did vote for both.
Yeah, and I'm actually surprised both didn't run away with it. Truthfully, when we set this up, I thought that was just going to run away. But Manfred and the owners, a lot of people, and understandably so, are very upset with Robbie.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I mean, I don't blame you for being pissed off at Robbie because that guy has really pooped the bed the last few weeks.
Like I said last week, I believe I said it on Thursday. Rob Manfred is making Roger Goodell look like Pete Rozelle.
Yeah, no, he is. I mean, he really is. And I read a nice article. I forgot what it was earlier today. But Bud Selig had the strike, and he's got a bust in Cooperstown now. So maybe this is Robbie's defining moment. Although Robbie
it doesn't look that way right now.
No, Robbie has not.
I just want to see this guy. I want to see this guy play again this season and launch some bombs, hit some dingers, and there you go.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%, man. I'm with you. Where do you get off, sir? We got to play that sound clip.
All right, okay. There you go.
She'll get back to you shortly. Thank you. I'll record your message at the tone. When you are finished, hang up or stay on the line for further options.
Hi there, where do you get off, sir?
Of course, it's just a timeless clip. Rob, where do you get off, man? Well,
that's good.
Okay. Apparently, we're going to have baseball as soon as this 5 p.m. deadline comes. But apparently,
I'm keeping up on Twitter and all that. The cesspool that is in fact Twitter, but nothing else seen so far. So,
all right, man. Well,
as we stray away from the MLB for our very last time today, thank God, unless we get news within the next 5 minutes.
No, I don't even want to hear about it.
The FBI has completed their investigation on the Bubba Wallace news situation that we heard in Talladega yesterday. We had the story about it in the headlines. We had to talk about it for a little bit before. But I want to bring up this picture here, Alex, and I know this is going to spark some interest. I found this on Twitter. I can't remember. Let me bring up the guy's name here quick.
Andy Joseph.
Andrew Joseph of the a writer for USA Today Sports and For the Win brings up this photo, and I'm going to bring it up here right now. Look at in the first picture on the left there with the car. Not sure whose car that is. You do see a noose, and let me bring away the banner here because it'll reveal when that was taken. That was taken November of 2019. You see that right there where the red line kind of brings it down? Yeah.
It's tied like a noose, but that's for the garage door, is my understanding.
Yeah. So that's what, and then you see the picture just a couple days ago. You see that tie string is now just a regular tie string, and it's not a noose. So was the noose that they found, was it
just that? Was it
just that? Because that's what I'm getting out of it. Is it was just a pull string, and someone just happened to tie it as a noose, whether it was as a joke, which is a
who
horrible
ties a
joke.
garage handle like that, regardless?
Yeah. So I don't know if that's what. I would assume that's what he's referring to when he found a noose in his garage was that. And the reason why it sat there for so long was because it was tied to the garage pull
door
string. So that's that. I mean, take that for what it's worth. Is it accurate? I'm not entirely sure. It's not, hasn't been confirmed at all, but that's just what I've seen on Twitter.
Wow. This situation has gotten interesting. So it's a good thing it wasn't a hate crime. I mean, obviously we don't want that. Everybody's rallied around Bubba Wallace because that just doesn't stand. This is far from over given the whole Confederate flag situation. But again, you got to applaud NASCAR for moving quickly and swiftly on everything that's occurred.
I mean, it's weird that if that is the case where it was just a garage door pull string, that's probably the best case scenario you can think of in this situation, because I mean, even though it kind of makes, I don't even want to say it makes Bubba Wallace look bad, because I don't think it really makes him look bad, but that's like probably the best case scenario you can think of for this situation, is that it was just a harmless, then again, harmless, I'm just using that, not really the best word to use here, but yeah, so I mean, that's the latest update on the whole NASCAR situation. So
interesting nonetheless. All right, let's go to our Tuesday thoughts.
So I don't know if you have one or not. I do. I have this. I've been seeing this a lot. We've talked about 2020 being a very interesting year overall.
Yeah.
And how the big thing I want to talk about is COVID-19 isn't going to be over when 2021 hits.
No.
Like, there's been a lot of people referencing, like, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. I mean, we've had a potential World War III to start the year. We had the Australia bushfires. We had Kobe Bryant's death. Now we have COVID-19 that's been rattling us for the last 4 months. COVID-19 isn't going to be over when the year is over.
No. I mean, this is going to be kind of a normal way of life, just waiting on a vaccine, is my understanding.
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's like, it has been historically, it has been a bad year for, I mean, just life in general. But just hearing people say, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. Okay, great. Yeah, like, we'll be farther along in 2021 than we were in 2020. But I'm getting people that are inferring that COVID-19, everything's just going to be over in 2021. It's all going to be gone. We're gonna hit the clocks of 2021, and it's all gonna be over. It's just not the case.
No.
So that's my Tuesday thought. I don't know what you have, if you do have anything at all.
I don't have anything.
That's okay.
But I will tell you this: I need to write more things down. This is going to be my Tuesday thought, because I had something yesterday happen. I don't remember what it was. My memory's not the greatest in the world, and I was thinking, I'm going to write it down. Guess what I didn't do?
You didn't write it down.
I need to write more things down. That's my Tuesday thought. That's my Tuesday thought, that I need to write more things down.
There you go. I like it.
I'm glad you like it.
It's a cop out, but it works.
It's real though. It's true. It's real though, man. It is real that I need to do that more. Big thanks to Jack White for joining us, Olivia Pelishek, and producer Kyle. My name is Alex Strouf. We will do this again on Thursday. Kyle, I'm going to make an executive decision now, right now. Twitter and YouTube on Thursday.
Twitter and YouTube.
If you're watching us on Facebook, you can get us on YouTube or Twitter.
All right.
On Thursday.
Sounds good. I like that
idea.
All right. We'll see you later.
We'll see you on Thursday.